All right, let's take a look at the state management library called Redux. So what is Redux? Redux is a predictable state management library. You can use this with any JavaScript application you're making, but it's used quite often with React. Redux is less of a library and more of an architecture for data flow. So let's take a look at the pieces of a Redux implementation in a React application. Here's a chart of the data flow in a React Redux application. Don't worry, we're going to go through all of these pieces in this module. Each objective will look at a different piece. So let's just take a brief view at what these are. First, in the top right, we have the store, which holds the state tree. The state tree is the data for your application. That state tree is then given to the view or your UI. In your UI, you have a component that will receive the state tree and usually will pass that data down via props to other components. So the props and data flow will still work the same in a React Redux application. When an event occurs, we use the action suite. There are action types, action creators, and actions. We'll get into what each of those are and the differences there, but for now, just know that an event will emit an action from the action creators to the reducers. Then finally, the reducer receives that action that was emitted and will create a new state tree and pass that to the store. The state tree is replaced, the old state tree is replaced by the new state tree, and that new state tree is then passed along to the view, and the cycle continues after that. There's three big principles with Redux. The first is that Redux creates a single source of truth for all of your data. The state or data of your app is stored in that single state object. The second principle of Redux is that state is read-only. So you cannot change the state tree. The only way to change state is to emit an action or an object describing what event happened in the UI. Finally, the last principle is that changes are made with pure functions. Those pure functions are the reducers. Reducers are just pure functions that take the previous state and an action that was dispatched and return the next state. So instead of changing one part of our state tree, we're replacing our state tree with an entirely new state tree or an entirely new object. Here's a quick look at the Redux documentation. Redux, again, is a predictable state container for JavaScript apps. It's predictable, so that means that it helps you write applications that behave consistently. Every action or every event in your application is tied to a specific action that gets dispatched to a reducer that will update your state and your data in a predictable manner. It's centralized, meaning there is one place for your application state. There's really great tools to help us debug our applications and be able to trace when, where, why, and how your application state changed. We'll also take a look at time travel debugging, which is really cool. And finally, as we mentioned before, Redux works with any UI layer, has a whole lot of add-ons that you can use to fit all of your needs. I recommend going through some of this documentation. There is, it really describes things very well, one step at a time, and you just go through each part and click on to the next part. This will give you a good background of why Redux was created, the core concepts behind Redux, a deeper look at the 3 principles we talked about, and then more and more with about Redux. Finally, there's some great examples here, and then there's an awesome tutorial that you can go through to learn about creating or implementing Redux into your application. So that is a quick overview of what Redux is. The next video we'll talk about how to create your store and get started with Redux.